Good morning. I want to welcome you, all of you here this morning, to this meeting of the Public Accounts Committee. I want to take the opportunity to welcome the members of the Auditor General's Department. We are very happy to have them here to help us anchor this meeting. We welcome the representatives from the Ministry of Communications who are here, which is the line ministry for NALIS. And of course, we welcome all the members here of the National Library and Information System of Trinidad and Tobago, NALIS. We also welcome those members of the media who are present. And if there are any members in the public gallery, we welcome you also. My name is Boindradat Tiwari. I'm the chair of this particular committee, Public Accounts Committee. My other members will introduce themselves to you shortly. The purpose of this meeting of the Public Accounts Committee is to examine the audited financial statements of the National Library and Information System of Trinidad and Tobago, NALIS, for the financial years 2009 to 2011, and the authority's expenditure and internal controls for the years 2009 to 2018. Based on the issues identified, the following key stakeholders have been invited. The Auditor General's Department, of course, as we mentioned, the Ministry of Communications, and the Board and Management of the National Library and Information System of Trinidad and Tobago. This meeting is being held in public and is being broadcast live on the Parliament's Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Viewers and listeners can send their comments related to today's topic via email at parl101@ttparliament.org, through Facebook, facebook.com/ttparliament, and Twitter @ttparliament. I will now ask members who have been invited here from the Auditor General's Department, the Ministry of Communications, and NALIS to introduce themselves, and then I'll ask members of the Public Accounts Committee to also introduce themselves. All right? Please do that now. I'll start with the Auditor General.
Good morning all. Riaz Ali, Audit Director, Auditor General's Department.
Good morning all. Shiva Srinath, Assistant Auditor General.
Good morning. Paula Green, Deputy Executive Director, Acting, NALIS.
Good morning all. Neil Parsonal, Chairman of NALIS.
Good morning. I'm Catherine Romain, Executive Director, NALIS.
Good morning, Chairman and members. Nataki Atiba Dilchan, Acting Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Communications.
Good morning, David Alexis, Director of Finance, NALIS.
Good morning, Brahma B. Harrison, Corporate Secretary, NALIS.
Good morning, Janie Joseph Batiste, Financial Accountant, NALIS.
Good morning, Devanand Ramlal, Audit Manager, NALIS.
Very much. Before I ask for opening statements, I will ask the members of my committee if they would introduce themselves. I'll start on my left here with MP.
Good morning, Adrian Leons, Member.
Good morning, Sharice Sipasad, Member.
Good morning, Taharko Bika, Vice Chairman.
Good morning, Paula Gopi-Schoon, Member.
Good morning, Lester Henry, Member.
And I already introduced myself, Boindradat Tiwari, Chair. I wonder if I could ask NALIS to make a brief opening statement, and I would then ask the Permanent Secretary to make a brief opening statement, and then I would ask the Auditor General if they would make a short opening statement. Thank you.
Good morning, Chairman, members. On behalf of the Board of NALIS, I'd like to thank the committee for the opportunity to discuss the operations of the National Library and Information Systems Authority, its governance and its contribution to national development. NALIS is a treaty of statute which came into being by Act 18 of 1998, with a mandate to provide for the development and coordination of all library and information services in Trinidad and Tobago. 21 years later, NALIS delivers library and information services to a diverse public through its Heritage Library, 23 public libraries, 4 mobile libraries in correctional institutions, 27 government agencies, 134 school library media centers in secondary and primary schools. Under the Act, NALIS has the authority generally to administer funds allocated by Parliament, to raise funds, to recruit and manage staff, and manage all resources and library infrastructure. This is achieved through an organization structure headed by a non-executive board of directors, which is usually appointed for a period of 3 years and is expected to provide strategic and policy direction to the organization. The day-to-day operations are handled by an executive director and a deputy executive director. Both positions fall under the purview of the Salaries Review Commission, and those so appointed receive their instruments from the President of the Republic. The current board was first appointed in February 2016 and reappointed for a further 3-year period in June 2019. This board envisages our libraries, particularly our public libraries, to be spaces that are easily accessible to the public, relevant to the diverse needs and increasing technological expertise of the population, to be a neutral space in the community, and one that could facilitate the growing need for dialogues, the panchayats, so to speak, between the elders who could sing every line of Sparrow's immortal Gina and Dinah, while listening to the youth in the community recite just as easily the lyrics of Gunman in Chihol. One of the first acts of the board was the establishment of a committee to oversee the re-engineering of the delivery of library services throughout Trinidad and Tobago. We believed then, as we do now, that the evolution of technology and the development of our communities necessitated a re-examination of how library services were delivered to the populations we serve. This re-examination has resulted in 2 key initiatives. The first is the evolution of what we call the Meloni Library Project, where the opening and closing hours were changed to reflect the peculiar needs of that community. As what is commonly referred to as a dormitory community, Meloni empties in the morning and refills again in the afternoon. To follow then the traditional 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. opening and closing hours from Monday to Friday and 8 a.m. to 12 noon on Saturdays would be to serve the interests, sadly, of staff alone and not the community. The Meloni Public Library now opens at 10 a.m. and closes at 6 p.m. during the week, and opens from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. on Saturdays. The second initiative was the establishment, in conjunction with the Ministry of Community Development, of co-located libraries in Mount Hope and Mount Lambert and the Barataria community centers, and with the Ministry of National Security for another library on the grounds of the Beetham Gardens Community Center. NALIS has been allocated $3.8 million in fiscal 2020 to further this project, and one of the first centers to benefit from this, Mr. Chairman, will be the soon-to-be-opened Indian Trail Community Center. With the support of both the former and current Ministers of Communication, this board has also insisted that every correctional institution in this country should have the benefit of a fully operational library, as this is one of the tried and tested ways of reducing the recidivism rate. We are currently seeking Cabinet approval to develop a framework that would allow for the engagement of clients of these institutions to be trained, developed, and paid as library assistants through the on-the-job training program. This board is very mindful of the need to change the all-too-pervasive narrative with respect to criminal recidivism, and believe that this effort will contribute significantly in this regard. Mr. Chairman, this board has recognized that NALIS's complete dependence upon government subventions to fund its recurrent operations is largely unsustainable. And therefore, we have mandated the management team to explore not only the means by which we could effect tangible cost savings through increased operational efficiencies, but to also examine ways in which NALIS could increase its own revenue generation capacity. In fiscal 2019, the revenue generated amounted to approximately $400,000, which in the grand scheme of things is the equivalent of 1 month's rent of all NALIS's properties that we occupy. This board is of the view that NALIS could significantly increase its revenue generation capacity, particularly in the areas of digitization and preservation, and in so doing, reduce its reliance on government funding. To this end, the board has also approved the establishment of a specialized business unit to be staffed and managed by persons with declared business management skills. We are exploring the commercialization of space at the Mayara and Chaguanas public libraries, for example, where the ground floors will be used for commercial spaces that are synergistic with the public libraries which will occupy the first floors of those buildings. Via this model, we envisage that libraries will become self-sustainable and assist in further reducing NALIS's reliance on government subventions for its sustenance. Governance of all bodies in receipt of public funds is of paramount importance to the tax-paying public, and this board has undertaken several initiatives to ensure that NALIS stands out as an institution of note in this regard. Since assuming office in 2016, the board has ensured through a very public and transparent process that an executive director was appointed, thus ending the line of acting appointments so common in the service. We have also ensured that those who now head the various divisions of the library are appointed on merit rather than on longevity of service. We have also ensured for the first time that there is a performance appraisal instrument to evaluate the performance of the executive director, who reports to the board. In its 21-year history, successive boards of NALIS never had the opportunity to formally appraise the executive directors, and apart from moral suasion, therefore, had no real means of holding their hands to the fire. I'm happy to report that this board has changed that. We believe that these initiatives, all of which we will gladly explore in greater detail with the committee, ought properly to redound to the greater good of NALIS and the national community. In closing, I'd like to pay special tribute to the hardworking, dedicated, and committed staff of NALIS, from the janitorial staff come down, who ensure every day that our libraries are open, accessible, and serving our population. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, for a very meaningful opening statement. And we will, of course, ask questions that relate to some of the things that you mentioned, but I must say that it was a very, very well thought out opening statement. Could I ask the Permanent Secretary if she would make hers?
Good morning. In June 2018, the Ministry of Communications became a standalone ministry once again, and it was during this time that NALIS was added to the gazetted portfolio of the ministry, with the mandate of the ministry being to support open government and to provide public information and to ensure public access to information. NALIS's mandate falls well within the remit of the ministry. I am therefore pleased to be here to support this process of accountability.
Could I ask the Assistant Auditor General if he'd make a statement on behalf of the Auditor General's office, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The present meeting is inquiring into the 2009 to 2011 financial statements. The last financial statements reported on by the Auditor General are the 2011, and these were reported on the 18th of July 2018. Mr. Chair, if you could allow me to give you a little status update on the status of the audits of NALIS. The 2012 to 2015 audits were given to a private accounting firm for auditing. These statements were all received in 2016. The contract was signed on June 22nd, 2017, including a clause to report by September 15th, 2017. This deadline was not met. The private firm indicated that adjustments were being made by NALIS, and this took an extended time to assess. By letter dated September 26, 2019, this year, 2 months ago, the private firm indicated that the 2012 to 2015 financial statements were audited. The AG's office is planning to review the working papers to ensure the integrity of the work done and the final opinion expressed. Regarding the written submissions by NALIS to this meeting, the AG is concerned on some of the comments made in this submission as it affects the financial statements and the operations of NALIS. Thank you.
Did you say that the 2012-15 audited reports were complete and they are being reviewed now by the Auditor General's office?
Yes. On September 26th, they were sent to the office as being signed, but we review the working papers to ensure the quality and the quantity of work done backs up what is sent to
Okay,
this
so
committee.
2016 to 18 remain outstanding.
Financial statements to be audited. For us to do the work.
Are they with are the auditors involved in that?
Not as yet.
Okay. Have they been submitted by NALIS to the auditors?
The records of the department shows we have received it 2018, but the 2016 and 17 were not received.
All right, okay, so there's a little gap there.
According to our records, yes.
All right, and well, we'll clear that up during the process, and we may ask you to comment again. All right, okay. We'll proceed now with some questions. I will start to ask some questions. My colleague, member Adrian Lawrence, needs to leave, so I will do mine quickly and give him an opportunity to ask some questions before he goes, and then we will go around the table. Okay? Now, I'll ask you some questions that are non-financial, because this is an opportunity for the public to understand what you do, and therefore we try to get the public to understand how these entities function, what is the value to them as citizens, etc., how they are managed. But we will later zero in on some of the financial issues. How many volumes does the National Library have? Do you know? Would you have that? Generally, in a library, they would say we have so many volumes. You don't know? Well, it's something you can check. I wasn't sure whether you would know. And it's not a big deal if you can't give the answer. Do you have any special or rare collections in the National Library system?
The Heritage Library Division is one of the divisions of NALIS, and that division is responsible for the preservation, promotion of our national heritage information. There are several special collections within the Heritage Library. So, for example, we would have like the Larry Constantine collection.
Okay.
We have like the Petite Musical collection.
Okay.
We have collections, let's say, on different aspects of carnival, mass players, Peter Minshall. So we do have a variety of rare and special collections which promote or which record for posterity the heritage of Trinidad and Tobago.
Okay, and the citizen, the person going to the library has access to these, or is special permission granted for access to these?
NALIS's mandate is to make sure that we make easily accessible to general public what we have in store. Now, there may be some restrictions in terms of the way you handle the material, because they're rare, they're precious, some of them are fragile.
Yes, and you don't want them.
So what we are doing to make it even more accessible is that we are in the process of digitizing some of the collections, and a lot of them are available via the website, the NALIS website.
Okay, so the thing that really makes it a national library system for Trinidad and Tobago, the vital elements would really be the heritage components. Is that correct?
Not fully.
All right.
We are called the National Library and Information System Authority. We do not have per se in Trinidad a national library. So it is a network of different kinds of libraries, a network of public, educational, special government libraries, institutional facilities. The Heritage Library, however, has a very, very special place in that, in the absence of a national library, it performs that function. And so that is the one that focuses on collecting things, all things Trinidad and Tobago, and even the Caribbean region.
Okay. I know the chairman mentioned how many locations you have in the library system, but can you repeat that for me?
So, Chair, we have 23 public libraries at the moment.
Yes.
Apart from the main library in Port of Spain, and one of the things we want people to understand about that building actually houses multiple libraries. We have a young adult library, we have a children's library, we have an adult library, and the heritage library. So in that building in Port of Spain, you actually have 4 libraries rolled into one. Apart from the public library system, we do have libraries, or the libraries in all secondary schools are manned by NALIS personnel. We have libraries in 27 government agencies and different ministries, and we have special, including the Parliament, the 48 libraries throughout. We have in the correctional institutes, we have right now at the Women's Prison, the YTC, and St. Jude's Home for girls, and we are in the process of expanding that. So, and plus we advancing more and more in terms of the primary schools as well.
Okay.
As well as Tobago.
Would you have an idea of how many people use the library system annually?
Yes, we do. Those figures are mapped on a monthly basis,
All right.
so that we can in fact aggregate that for you.
That is excellent. Thank you very much. You could just give the global figure and maybe the Port of Spain figure, so we'll have an idea of how it's spread.
So in terms of the public library system, we have somewhere in the region of 500 and... In terms of the public library system, for example, in 2017, we had 560,428 persons visiting the public libraries. That's physical walking, yes.
For the year?
For the year. In 2018, we had 419,300. In 2019, that's the last fiscal, we had 429,387 persons. But on the other, that's just the public library system. From the angle of the schools, we have about 2 million, an average of 2.5 million students and teachers using the libraries in the secondary schools. In the schools, we have an average of 2.5 million users. Now, how does that happen? We count, there are 134 schools. We have more or less a captive audience in that in many of the schools there are dedicated library classes where we teach library and information skills and lots of other stuff. But when we add our usage, it comes up to about 2.5 million. No, we don't have 2.5 million persons in Trinidad, but the frequency with which persons use the facility.
But I think that Chair,
but you must have an understanding of the population which uses the library, both adult and children. What is the percentage usage by the the adults and children?
Okay, so even though I just called the numbers for the schools, that does not say that they are not also included in the number for the public libraries, in that anyone can use a public library, but only students in a particular school get to use the library in their school.
Okay, what percentage of the population, of the adult population, what is a member of NALIS, of the libraries?
If I may, member, just to give some context as well. The number of visits to the public libraries, the executive director mentioned three years of figures. The number of active library card holders we have, for instance, yes? In 2016, the numbers were 232,430. In 2017, 2018, that number increased to 252,081. And in 2018, 2019, it increased even further to 269,988. I want to make the connection that while the actual visits to public libraries might be seen to be declining, the visits to NALIS's website for research has been trending upwards over the last 3 years as well. So you have a decrease in physical visits, but you have an increase in the use of the technology in accessing the library.
But can I just get a split in library card holders, adults and children under the age of 18? I want to have an understanding of whether whether children are reading more and visiting the library and benefiting from the library services.
Member, we will have to supply that information to you. At the moment, I don't have that breakdown between adults and children.
Okay, a couple of quick questions again. Which is besides the Port of Spain facility, which is the location of second highest use? Do you know? And if you don't know, you can give it to us at some later date.
Traditionally, the second location of highest use would have been the Carnegie Free Library in San Fernando.
San Fernando.
Yes. However, we've had to move from that, icon of a building
facility,
there
yes,
at the library corner, and we have relocated to another location that has not maintained the high level of usage as we did on High Street. So right now, our high use points would be Arima, it would Chaguanas.
Okay, thank you. I have 3 quick questions, and then I will pass on to the MP MP Leons. How many people are employed in the NALIS system?
We have, in terms of our staffing structure, our establishment, positions for 1,087 members of staff. And that breakdown basically would be 94 contract positions, the rest are permanent positions. However, currently we have unfilled positions of about 300.
Okay, so you have about 700 members of staff.
So warm bodies would amount between 700 and 800.
I'm using big general numbers now rather than precision. All right. Would you say that the library is up to date with the technology it needs for our time?
Chair, the technology we used last week is outdated today.
Yeah, well, yeah,
and,
but
in that respect, there will always be need to update the technology we use.
But
we do
well off are we?
I think we are doing pretty well at the moment. One of the challenges we have is the maintenance of some of our search engines, because we use EBSCOhost and some of these, and because largely in terms of prioritization of funding, we have to decide at some points in time which of these which engines we pay for. But in terms of the technology, people do have access. In fact, if you have a library card, you can stay at home and borrow books from the library.
Okay. Would anybody be fear? I mean, if somebody came to the library and said that this library is not up to date, or it is not keeping up with technology, would that be an unfair statement in your view?
Grossly unfair.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to clear that up. And the other question is about finance, and I will stop at this point and go on to my colleague. How would you describe, I know we have all the numbers and so on, we've looked at them. How would you describe your financial situation, first of all? And secondly, what is your biggest financial problem?
Our current financial problem, one of the things we have guaranteed to staff is that every month they will get their salaries. And so far, we have not failed in that regard. So with respect to the payment of salaries, that's not an issue for us. The biggest problem we face is the difference between what is allocated and what is actually received. And I think that's something that happens with every state agency.
Okay, and just one more thing. Could you give a quick response? I'm sure other members will interrogate that issue, but could you give a quick response of why it is that we are not up to date with the audited accounts and how quickly we are going to get things up to date?
I think it's a question best the Director of Finance is here.
Okay, good morning again. With regard to the audited financial statements, as the representative, the Assistant Auditor General said, the 12 to 15 have been completed, the audits for the years 12 to 15. We had an issue a couple of years ago with regards to the treatment of IAS 20, the International Accounting Standard. So that has been basically sorted out. We have made a decision, and so we have submitted all the financial statements, 16 to 18, all have been submitted to the Auditor General, right? Annually, we submit our financial statements to the Auditor General. So once the Auditor General appoints the next auditor, in terms of the company, to do the audits, we will be able to organize and present the information to complete those audits.
One of your problems is that the auditor assigned to do your work has not been, the issue has not been resolved?
Well, the issue is that because the 12 to 15 was only recently finalized, the Auditor General, I think, would have been waiting for that to finish before they approve with whoever else.
I understand. I appreciate. Representative Leons?
Thank you very much, Chair. First of all, I'd like to commend you for, through your opening statement, the work that you have been doing. I can personally say that I've seen and felt a change in NALIS and how they have been able to reach the community. Specifically, like the initiative that you all did in Meloni in terms of modifying the times to meet the needs of the community. I listened to you and you mentioned that your revenue generation would have been about 400,000.
Yes.
Which is like a month in rent. You also spoke about having a business unit. Now, in your strat plan, under financial viability, you have a business plan that you would have developed to increase your revenue. I heard you mention about changing, using commercial spaces in some of your buildings.
Yes.
How is that going, right? As your strat plan focuses from 2016, 17, 18, and 19. We are now in 2019. How has your strategy for financial viability and sustainability been going as of 2019?
Remember, the board is not entirely happy with the pace at which that is going. NALIS derives revenue in terms of our revenue generation. We derive revenue, for instance, from the fees that are charged for overdue books. That fee is currently 25 cents a week. That has been so since King Hatchet was a hammer. That is due to, we're looking at the regulations, and that is likely to change. We have not had approval as yet. So in terms of the fees that we can charge, that is going to change. NALIS also raises revenue through things like photocopy facilities at the various libraries. We do rent out the facilities at the National Library, and we sell memorabilia and little those kinds of items. That is what amounted to the $400,000, just approximately $400,000 for the year. Where we're going now is, and we talk about the creation of a strategic business unit. NALIS has a wonderful repository of assets in its, what we call the PAC lab, the Preservation and Conservation Lab. Throughout Trinidad and Tobago, you will know that there are institutions there that are in dire need of someone or an agency who could preserve their records. The Parliament records, for instance, church records, bank records, all these things that are disintegrating over time. We believe that the creation of a strategic business unit dedicated wholly and solely to that, to generating the revenue that could be derived from that, is something that can help us and help us tremendously. So the monetization of that asset is something, and we intend to, the board has approved the creation of that as a standalone unit that would be separate and apart from NALIS itself. We talked about commercialization of the spaces. The Mayara Library, for instance, is a 2-story building. The Mayara Library, in its present configuration, is 10 times the size of the existing library in Mayara. Why it was built 10 times the size, that's not for me to comment on. But we believe that the top floor of the library could very easily accommodate everything that we want to do for library services in Mayara. So what the board has done is to basically instruct that the ground floor be reconfigured so that we'll have a commercial space at the ground floor with businesses that are synergistic to the library services that will exist on the top floor, so that you have now a library that will in fact sustain itself. It will basically pay for itself, and therefore we reduce our reliance on government subventions. We hope that we can do the same thing in Chaguanas whenever we finish the Chaguanas Public Library, for instance, so that unit dedicated, to just generating revenue. That unit will be staffed, we anticipate, by persons with clear business acumen. There are many persons in the library system who are not librarians, who, even though they are in the library system, would have pursued their degrees in management and business and various other, other professions. And what we intend to do first and foremost is to target those persons who are already in the system to staff that unit, and so bring it up to speed where they can just generate the ideas to raise revenue, to generate revenue. We are also in the process of redesigning. We've just refurbished our audiovisual room. That is rented out as well as any commercial space we have in the buildings. We will in fact be renting those out as much as possible.
Okay, through you, Chair. I just want to be clear on something. You have indicated a number of initiatives that would assist in your operational cost. Has a study been done to identify, okay, we need X amount of dollars in NALIS to be sustainable, and as such, raising fees from 25 cents to $1 would reduce it by this, having commercial space that will bring in a particular amount of revenue. Has a study been done to encapsulate the complete cost of the operation of NALIS?
Remember, we are quite familiar with or knowledgeable in terms of how much it actually costs to run NALIS for the year. So we're quite familiar with that. The strategic business unit, for instance, the numbers have been done, and we know that we have already projected how much that can add to NALIS's revenue over time. So those studies have been done. We've scoured the market. We know that the market is there, and we have the numbers to substantiate or to corroborate what it is we're saying with respect to the creation of that business unit.
Thank you. And final question. So some of the initiatives will be dependent on, for example, I heard you say the completion of the Chaguanas Library and that kind of stuff. How soon do you think that some modifications to, for example, the fees and some of these initiatives, how soon do you see these things being implemented to improve your financial viability?
With respect to the change in the fees, NALIS, in its 21 years of existence, NALIS has never produced regulations to be approved by the Parliament. We have very recently submitted those regulations, draft regulations, to the Line Ministry to be forwarded to the Parliament. We do have some other work because of some other things that recently came up. So that, in terms of once we get those final things done, then it will we anticipate that it will get to the Parliament in short order. So once the Parliament approves it, I think it's done by negative resolution. I think we might be able to increase those fees as quickly as possible.
Thank you. Morning again. I'm just going to focus on some of the financial issues which reading through the documents, I'm a little concerned about. One of the things that struck me is that it was mentioned that there's a $5 million raise owed to your pension fund. And I was wondering what's the status of that, if it has been resolved and the pension funds have been allocated. Could you tell me?
Yes, that matter has been sorted out. We had a shortage of allocations at 2018, and that was the reason why we could not pay all the employers' contributions. But the decision was made, an executive decision, to pay from the NALIS fund those arrears to the trustees to clear that outstanding balance.
And you're going to keep the payments up to date?
Well, again, it will be based on our allocations. So in the current fiscal, we were allocated 16.6 million. The total that is required to ensure that we pay all our employers' contributions is just in the vicinity of 19 million. So in the current fiscal, we are also short in terms of allocations.
So it's an ongoing problem.
It's a
Okay. Sorry?
Follow-up.
Yes. Your internal audit function, do you have an internal audit function?
Yes, in fact, the internal audit manager is sitting behind you.
And regular reports are submitted to the board
Yes,
every month or whenever you all meet and stuff, and
yes. There is an audit committee of the board,
Okay.
chaired by one of the members, and that committee meets regularly.
and issues are dealt with.
Issues are dealt with at
Okay.
that stage, yes.
The IS-20 issue, when you say it was resolved, what do you mean, resolved?
Sorry. Yes. So NALIS has chosen to not adopt in order to achieve greater operational efficiency, right? The NALIS Act allows us to take such an approach with regards to using unspent releases for the operations of the organization.
Oh, so you don't follow the IS-20?
Yes, because that standard basically talks about recognizing government grants as deferred income.
As deferred income.
And yes, and recognizing it as income only as the asset is depreciated.
Right,
Yeah.
so you've decided not to do that?
Yes, so we
And
just
that-
recognize
and
it immediately and depreciate assets in a normal way.
Okay, and that's what it was agreed with the Auditor General?
Well, I did have discussion with an officer in the Auditor General, and they said if we can choose to do that, but of course it will be stated in our audited financials as an exception.
Okay, all right. Litigation costs, because you're always in a deficit position, what's the situation with payment to suppliers and the requisite, litigation that would ensue from non-payment of bills and that kind of thing?
So far, we are up to date. I am not aware of any lawyers suing us for fees.
Sorry?
Yes, so far we are up to date. I'm not aware of anybody suing us for fees. We are up to date on litigation fees.
No, I don't mean litigation fees. I'm talking about litigation actions. What's the status of your litigation actions?
Okay, we had made some submissions on the actions before us. With respect to lawyer fees, we are up to date. These matters are still before the courts. Judgments have not been made. And I hope that judgments would not be made against NALIS.
We are looking at $3.2 million in claims. And to me, that's a very serious, and it's page 80 of your submission.
Yes. That refers to the non-payment of contract fees due to a contractor engaged in one of our IDF projects. Fees were allocated but not released on time. I'm talking the contractor was not paid for a period of years. He pulled out of the contract and sued NALIS.
And is this the only matter?
That's the biggest one right now.
And in total, how many matters do you have? Can you give me a rough idea?
About 7.
Why I'm concerned about this, because I listened to the chairman's remarks about plans for the future, and I'm wondering how you're going to marry non-payment to your suppliers with your plans for the future, because people are not going to be very happy to come to work with you if you don't have a good record with respect to payment of bills for projects, etc. So how are you going to deal with that to fulfill your strategic objectives?
Thankfully, NALIS does not have a very high litigation rate, so to speak. Our major issues are with the IDF projects, the Infrastructure Development Fund projects. And we've had some challenges in terms of getting our releases on a timely basis from the ministry, the relevant ministries, to be able to pay some of the invoices. But that would not have been the only contributing factor. We would have had instances where we received invoices which we've had to query. And so these have caused some delays, some challenges, but overall, I think most of our projects have been functioning. What we've tried to do is to build working relationships with the people who are in the our external project managers. So from that end, we are hoping that we'll be able to come to amicable resolutions with this issue. And I think I should add that we have actually two issues. One would be the one recorded here, and we are working to forestall another even as we speak. In terms of suppliers, because we have had some bills coming over from fiscal 2019 into this fiscal, we do keep open relationship with our contractors. So we are able to communicate if we are going to be late in payment, be able to negotiate some of that. So we've been doing fairly okay. Yes, this is a challenge, but yes, we'll overcome this challenge.
Sorry, the OSH issues, because you need to be open to fulfill your mandate. And I've been reading about some OSH issues. What are you doing to resolve those?
One of the criteria for spending during the last fiscal was to ensure that as best as possible we maintain a safe and healthy environment for staff. So that although we have been again challenged with releases under normal subvention, we have used the NALIS fund in such a way to be able as best as possible to keep libraries open so that staff and the public will not be endangered. Now, there is room for improvement in many areas. So for example, we do have a lot of AC crashing and that kind of, some of our buildings are a little old, but some of them are very new too. So what we do, we ask assistance where we can. So we do have, for example, CPEP assisting us from time to time. We do have regional corporations assisting us from time to time to be able to maintain an acceptable standard for operations. We also have frequent visits from the OSH agency, and I think generally we have been able to satisfy them that we are working on the issues that they've identified and we are resolving them.
Okay, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Could I go on to Senator?
Thank you, Chair. And I want to jump to page 54 of the submission, which speaks to the finance aspect of things. And I'm marrying that with the fact that other income, apart from the government subvention, is less than 1/2 of 1% of NALIS's income stream. And to move that upwards significantly, the one main issue that I have is access. Because were there no library in Point Fortin, when I was growing up, I would not have had access to encyclopedias and so on. And I may not have passed a presentation in College San Fernando, and I may not have been here today. So therefore, therefore that's why I volunteer whenever I could for free at our nation's libraries, and I would encourage persons to do so. So I hope that it doesn't affect the cost of persons who want to do book launches and so on, because I see the intention is to increase the cost of rental by 60%. And I want to know what have the stakeholders, for example, the Poets Circle and the Writers Circle, have to say about these things, about the specific increase, or have they been so advised or consulted?
I'm not certain as to the extent of their responses, but one of the things, 60% of $1 is $1.60. The fees that NALIS charges at the moment are very, very, very low fees. And therefore anything, and as I indicated, 25 cents for an overdue book for a week. the fees or general rental fees are extremely low, in fact, well below the market rates. And we anticipate that there will be some measure of resistance, but we are also partnering with a number of other agencies who we donate time and space for free. So that the access that you speak about is very much there. In fact, if you go to NALIS, the main library today, the International Men's Day Committee is having a series of activities, and they started yesterday, and that will go on until the 19th when we celebrate International Men's Day. The Vision on Mission, for instance, they are afforded access to the National Library. There are other bodies, there are other agencies that have access to the library free of charge. So we try to balance as much as possible that which we do pro bono as against what we can charge people and a rate that we believe that is affordable in the present context.
Okay, that's comforting, because I spent time with the Writers' Circle, and I don't know if they paid for the space, but it was a comforting thing that I could share with other writers myself when I'm in my creative space, which is not often these days. I'm in politics.
I suspect that is limited these days.
Yes, but the question I want to turn to also page, the written submission, this is the first submission, I believe. All right, and I went to page 25 of that. And there's just one question, but I want to just put the question on, but to leave it, because I want to ask all one time, right? On page 25, there line 8, where there's the statement, no internal audit investigations have been triggered as yet. So I just want a response on that, but to hold the response, because I want to go to the other question that I have, which is on page 31 regarding the pension plan, stating that there's a deficit of approximately 100 million based on the actuarial evaluation done in 2015. The question would be, under the pension fund would have been underfunded at that time. Given that it's a new fund, it would have been about 6 years old at that time. Now that we are 4 years on, has there been any other actuarial review? And how close is the fund to being properly funded? There's a last question I want to just ask. Okay, so I'll leave that and
I think happily the answer is yes, that there have been other actuarial reviews, but I will pass it over to.
So there was an actuarial review last year, which reflected a decrease in the deficit from about 100 million, and we're now down to $61 million. How has that been achieved? Basically, when we realized that there was a problem, one of the things that was done was that we approached Central Bank seeking approval to spread the repayment period for that deficit. It was originally approved for a 16-year period to be able to bring it down, but now we have brought that down, and we perceive that within 5 years or so, but by 2026, we expect to have cleared that deficit. What it has meant is that the employer's contribution has had to increase to be able to meet that, in addition to which we are working with the investment managers to make sure that we get the best returns on our investment.
I think, and in terms of the internal audit investigations, no investigation triggered as yet on page 25 of the report.
Member, good morning again. The Internal Audit Department has done normal audit projects, and these are not classified as investigations, they're just normal audit projects that we do according to the audit plan. So in terms of investigations, we have not really done any investigation, just the normal audit projects on our audit plan approved by the board.
There's one question I want to ask, and thanks for the response. It has to do with self-publishing. Right? I know NALIS facilitates self-published writers. I self-published with NALIS 2 publications personally. I know many persons who do so, and I encourage persons to do so. It's an excellent service. One question I always wanted to find out, what is the potential of NALIS selling, because NALIS writes you a check if your publication can qualify for the shelves of NALIS. For selling publications of local writers and authors abroad to other libraries in the Caribbean, other libraries on different continents that you may have professional arrangements with, which can also provide a revenue stream for NALIS because you can take a percentage. And the authors will be very happy to hear that the system is available. I know that the system is available with companies in the United States, but why should I take this platform to promote foreign entities when NALIS may be able to create that as part of your business, the new business initiative?
Yes. Member, I want to thank you for your kind words, to NALIS, and thanks very much for using it, and the witness that you give is testimony that there is still a lot of work for us to do. The question of that strategic business unit, what you've identified, is certainly one of the areas in which I think NALIS can explore, and explore to great advantage to NALIS. It is not I will admit, it's not something that has come to me as a chairman of the board, but I'm sure as we explore all the possibilities, because as I tell the management team all the time, nothing is off the table. We have to reduce our reliance on government subventions, and anything that we can do legitimately that will increase that, we are quite prepared to consider it.
MP Gopisco.
Thank you very much. Good morning once again. Good morning once again, and let me congratulate you on the work that you're doing. And it's quite evident that you are a committed team, both at the level of the ministry and at NALIS. I asked for some information, and which you promised to get back to me about your membership, the split between adults and children under the age of 18. But I also want a split in terms of active members, and I would like to get some figures that are not aged and very current. I want to go straight to the question of technology. Overall, as a government and as a people, we want to make sure that we develop a reading population. We understand very well there are students getting out of university, and they may have degrees at the highest levels, but they can't write properly, and they also can't speak properly. Communication is an issue, but it comes back to reading. And therefore, we are really very concerned about the work that you're doing, and that you are in fact able to reach out to a large cross-section of the population. Without a doubt, the technology interface is absolutely important. But when I turn to your written submissions on page 23, and I quote, NALIS notes further that the library technologies in most schools have not been upgraded since 2008, and the integrated library management software used, Alexandria, is in past serious need of upgrading. Likewise, the technologies used in many of the government libraries are both dated in terms of hardware and software. Now, we all understand the challenges that we as a country have faced in the last 5 years in particular. So I'm asking you the question with regard to your current, the current sums that have been allocated to you. How much of it is going to be focused on improvements in the area of technology, because we understand that you are competing in that direction. How much of your allocation will be directed to improving the hardware and software at all government libraries, and also in terms of upgrading your library information, integrated library management software, right? And you can also include in that the funding that would be directed to generally meeting the needs of delivering e-resources and improving your library technologies.
So let me start by explaining that in terms of the NALIS network, there are some differences in that NALIS is responsible for the assets of the public libraries as well as the heritage library system. NALIS is responsible for the staffing and services in the ministry libraries, the libraries in schools, the libraries under the THA, the funding for those resources come from the parent agency. The reason you would have seen 2008 here, that would have been under the SEM project, when SEM was modernizing the school system. The entire School Library Media Center, all of them were updated, automated. The software continues to work, but there is need to purchase new licenses as we go forward. A lot of negotiation has gone on with the suppliers of the Alexandria software, and they have given us a lot of, what we want to call it, free updates, and that has kept us on the system. But there really is need to re-evaluate at this point the technologies in the school. Now, many principals have on their own spent money from their school funds to upgrade their libraries, but it is not evenly done across Trinidad and Tobago. In the matter of Tobago, for example, the purchasing of the resources, the technologies, etc., is done through the Tobago Library Services, and that works fine. But it's a similar case in the ministries where you would find some permanent secretaries would spend a lot of energy and resources on the libraries, and in other cases, not so much. So that if there is a disparity in terms of the level of technology used between the libraries, it is because there are different parent bodies responsible. Right. What we hope to do, though, what we want to do, is to see if we can achieve a network platform among the libraries so that we share the same technology, and it means that access from one ministry to another ministry, or even from a public library, would be easier for everybody concerned.
And part of that can be resolved, and certainly in the schools, where there is one integrated system, where rather than a principal having to delve into their own funds to upgrade a computer lab and that sort of thing, where computers and computer labs are provided to the school and upgraded and maintained via the Ministry of Education, for instance, so that the school in Blanchisches will have the same equipment as a school in Port of Spain. As it is, that does not happen. If we provide, or if we are to go the route of ensuring that each school has equal access, it would mean that the government would have to pass partner with NALIS in terms of the delivery of the software, but certainly to provide to each school equal access across the board in terms of the software and hardware that is available.
Perhaps PS may want to comment from the government angle.
Remember, I don't think there's much more that I can add in terms of that. In terms of funding, when it comes to NALIS, although they give requests for a certain amount of funding, it comes under the ministry in bulk. And we do have the challenges that we've had recently where ministries are given ceilings. So it's the same money we more or less have to share around. It's not that the Ministry of Communications in particular has additional to add or to give to NALIS at this time.
Okay. Thank you. And I see that, so I share with you, I share and I understand and I accept that an integrated system is needed across all schools and all libraries that are available to the public. That apart, I see that you have a membership in the American Library Association. You also have some involvement with a system in the UK. What has been the benefit, and what's the cost of that to you, and what has been the benefit in terms of developing NALIS into a world-class organization?
Hi, good morning again. It's imperative as a library system that is looking forward to being a 21st century type of library service, that we maintain our connections on the international platform to be able to, so you would have spoken to the issue of technology. Even though we are challenged in terms of upgrading our technology, it does not mean that we are challenged in terms of the information that we are gaining from our partners around the world. NALIS is seen as a significant entity, representative of the region, the Caribbean region. And we are very fortunate you know, from that aspect, to be able to liaise with our partners in different parts of the world, the ALA, the International Federation of Library Associations, IFLA, and many other libraries in other other regions, right, to be able to keep ourselves up to date with trends in library services. And it has been a significant value to us. We have been, in the past few years, attending ALA conferences. We are active in IFLA, especially through our Library Association of Trinidad and Tobago as well, right? So those entities are really significant to keep the organization on its toes, so to speak, with regard to trends that are valuable to NALIS going forward, despite some of the challenges that we are experiencing right now.
And I dare say that, that NALIS also finds itself as the lead in a number of other areas. So in terms of preservation and conservation, for instance, NALIS in fact is the lead agency for the region in terms of preservation and conservation. So that our conservator, for instance, does workshops and you know, throughout the region, providing and offering that service. Unfortunately, she does it for free. So that might have to change.
A last statement question from me. The love of reading really starts at a very early age. And my grandson, who lives in Houston, is taken to the library. He's only 18 months, and he's taken to the library, and he runs up and down with books in his hands, and then sits down on the ground, and they read stories, and they sit, and he appreciates what's going on. I want to know how much of that we're doing to get from toddlers up, brought into our libraries by parents on a Saturday, maybe even a Sunday evening. Do we have a roving library system? Can we go out to communities on Sunday afternoons and that kind of thing? Reading and the love of adventure and books and that kind of thing really starts very, very early. And sometimes it's not inculcated. No offense to the parents, it's not inculcated in the homes. How much of that are you doing?
Member, I would take the opportunity to invite you to, and all the other members, to a NALIS library on a Saturday. Any of the libraries, in the children's library, if you go to NALIS now, you'd see children running all over the place. The libraries are no longer a place where you meet this person who puts a finger on the lips and tells you to keep quiet. That's no longer the model that we use. Very interestingly, in terms of encouraging the love of reading, we have a young population in terms of the teenagers, the adolescents into late teens, who are more into video games, who are more into the PS4s and those kinds of material, which we ought not properly to just cast aside and denigrate, because we believe that they can in fact be teaching tools as well. So if you go to the young adult library on a Saturday, for instance, we'll invite you to play a video game, but you must tell us the story. You must tell us the story behind the game. You must tell us why you made the decision to go down that road as opposed to the other road. Why you opted to save one person and not the other. In other words, what are the values that are inherent in that? So it's not just a question of playing video games for video games' sake. It's using the technology and using where they are now to be able to tell the story for us. Unfortunately, NALIS libraries do not open on a Sunday. We aren't at that stage yet. Perhaps one day that might happen. But on a Saturday, we open until 4 so that anybody can come into to the libraries at that stage. Yes, we have our bookmobile libraries, yes? Edie?
I want to add that I want to add that it's not just Saturday. At any day of the week, you can see single fathers coming in with their little babies, their little ones. You can see grandparents coming in with the children. Even the people who go to the preschools, they come in by droves. And it's really, if I can say from a professional angle, one of the greatest joys is to see the way they engage with the literature, to see the way the staff engage with them. Now, you may meet a member of staff outside and say, what an upstanding person. But when you meet them interacting with the children, they come down to the level, and it is really a place of abundant joy. Our staff do a fantastic job.
Excellent. Absolutely wonderful.
Senator Henry. Yeah.
Okay, morning. I want to give you an opportunity to elaborate on your issues with human resource problems at the institution. Because for one example is you have this project manager position, and you seem to have someone doing about 4 different jobs in another instance. Could you, bring us up to speed on what's those challenges?
So you've cited the project management issue here, and it has really been a challenge in that we've been down to 1 or 2 persons in that department for a long time. The good news is that we are currently in the process of recruiting staff to enhance the capacity of that department. So we will be going out very soon looking for a project manager. We are looking for project implementation officer, assistant implementation officer. In addition to that, we are reorganizing, re-engineering the project management department in that we are merging a couple departments with synergies. So for example, our research and planning, there are some synergies. There are some synergies with our OSH area. There are some synergies with our facilities area. The board has approved our proposal to merge these departments so that we will build capacity, and the problems that we would have identified in this document would be a thing of the past.
Okay, but is it strictly a question of funding that is causing the problem, or some other factor at play?
Part of the challenge that is experienced throughout the public service is the paucity of salaries. That very often the quality and the caliber of the person you want will not be attracted by the salaries offered in the public service. And the more we have to create the opportunities for persons in the public service to be able to be remunerated for what they're worth. At the moment, it is something that is a challenge throughout the system. So that's one of the reasons why we have not been able to attract the quality and caliber of persons that we.
So
that
just to be clear, funds are allocated for the position, or not? Right. But it's not good enough. That's what you're saying.
Okay, it takes some juggling of funds because, for example, as I would have said, we have with 94 contract positions. We know that we cannot, at this point, fill all of them. So we have to look at the organization's mandate. We have to look at what our strategic direction is and determine how best we can staff accordingly. So we can't do all. What has happened is that in fiscal 2020, there has been a significant increase in the number of IDF projects that we are responsible for, as well as the PSIP projects, as well as the board mandated projects. So our project portfolio has increased, and therefore, in terms of priority, it is essential that we have a properly functioning project unit.
Okay, so I also see you have some challenges with your network, upgrading your networks and so on. How is that going?
Again, we are in a better position than when we wrote this document in that we are not able to do all that we want to do, but we've got releases under 2 PSIP projects that will enable us to do some work on our firewall as well as in our storage capacity. Additionally, we have been working with TSTT to update our telephony. So instead of the landlines, we are moving towards voice over IP technology. It isn't at the pace we would have done it a few years ago, but we are getting it done even now.
Okay, finally, Chairman, the issue of your risk management profile, how are you addressing that issue of risk management?
So the document again in front of you would have said we do not have a risk management policy, because I think you wanted us to be downright honest about that, and we are downright honest about that. What we have said though is that risk management is infused throughout almost every document that we have. So starting from the Act, let's take the strategic plan that we are currently using. A lot of risk management or analyses, etc., went into that before we actually came up with strategies which would mitigate some of our risks. Then in our human resource policies, in our financial rules, we have risks infused throughout NALIS. What we don't have is a single document that we can wave and say, this is our risk management policy.
But we take the point that is being made, that we cannot run a successful organization, or we cannot run an organization successfully if we do not examine holistically what our risks are. And therefore the board will undertake to ensure that a risk policy is produced as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple of questions I want to ask. Of the 300 or so unfilled vacancies in your system, how many of them are librarians? How many unfulfilled positions are librarians?
In terms of the library positions, generally, this would be a mixture of paraprofessional and professional. There are 216 unfilled ones.
Unfilled.
In the paraprofessional area, most of our positions are filled. The difficulty is getting qualified librarians, and it's a problem we have been working on for years. We have made significant progress because 3 years ago, if you'd asked me this, 4 years, the number would have been higher. But because of the scholarship program, which is, well, ongoing, we'll be coming to a particular close at this time, but an ongoing scholarship program, we have been able to recruit over 119 qualified persons to be able to fill the librarian positions. So that although we can send in the precise information per category, the vast majority of vacancies reside at the area of librarian 1, and second highest would be at the area of librarian 2.
Okay, would that affect the schools?
The schools?
The shortage then, the shortage of librarians and the lack of appointment of librarians.
It did affect the schools, and that is why at one point Cabinet made approval for so many of those positions to be assigned in the schools. However, given that we do not have enough librarians to meet everyone's need, we do have a structure that enables professional guidance at all schools. So we do have the Library Assistant 1, which is a fairly senior position within the country. We have a Library Assistant 2 in most schools, which is even it's a very high range, actually. If there is no school librarian, there is a structure whereby there are school library supervisors who would regularly visit each library and would ensure that the professional standard of service is maintained.
All right. There are claims that some schools do not allow this library to function because there is no appointed librarian in the school. Is that a fact, and should that happen, that the library would not be accessible to the children?
I am not familiar with any such case, and I like to think that I'm usually up to date on that kind of information, but I'm not familiar with that case. I would investigate to see if
so there should not be a situation in which students do not have access to a library in their school because you don't have an appointed librarian or a functioning librarian.
There are 2 schools, as far as I am aware, where we do not have staff currently, and that would be the school that was formerly Belmont Intermediate and I believe Saraswati Hindu School. Now there are historical reasons for this, but otherwise I'm not familiar that there is such a situation. What happens at the primary school level is where we do not have bodies residing, but we do have teams that go in from time to time which would, analyze, evaluate, set up libraries, recommend, train teachers, train OJTs, and visit the libraries to make sure that they continue running.
Okay, the technology aspect, I know my colleagues have asked about it, and I mean, and it's good that they did because it's such a critical part of what libraries are today. And you yourself indicated that what we really need is a system that allows for technology upgrades as required, and that would then transfer across the system at every location. All right, I mean, how close are we to having or moving to that particular approach to the management of the technology platform for the library system? And what would be necessary to get there? Because that is really an important thing. All right, I thought the good news was the participation by relatively good numbers in the library system, whether it was children, adults, etc. I think the bad news is the technology. So how could we solve that problem?
Chair, I think honestly we are not as close as we would like to be.
Okay. Is there anything that can be done to quicken this process?
I think
because it would make so much difference. I think you know that
yes.
better than me because you are living in this system.
I think, Chair, one of the key areas or one of the quick wins would be for a government initiative that would just upgrade libraries rather than not on a piecemeal basis, but an initiative that would seek to upgrade computer systems and computer libraries, computer labs throughout the entire system. If it comes from that level, if it comes from a government approach to modernizing the education system by ensuring that we have computer labs, functioning computer labs in each and every school, irrespective of where they are, then I think we'll be much closer to solving that problem.
Yeah. All right. I want to get to some of the audit issues. Just a couple of questions because I think it's important. I think the Assistant Auditor General indicated that he had some concerns about the written submissions, and that is reflected also in the reports that were done here. Simple issues like reconciliations, VAT refundable mistakes, rent receivables, accounts payable. Very, very simple thing. I mean, I can't understand, for instance, the lack of reconciliation of accounts a year later. So he said that he had some concerns about the written submissions, and I've identified some of the accounting problems. I wonder if I could ask the Auditor General to make some comments, the Auditor General's office, to make some comments on these. And I think Senator Tahaka had a follow-up question. Maybe you could ask it now and they could include it in their issues because he raised it with me.
Thanks, Chair. The question for the Auditor General, it has to do with the internal audit, no investigations being triggered. And if you had any opinion that you'd want to share with the committee on that.
Mr. Chair, during the preparation for any audit, we look at the work of the internal auditor in any entity, any state enterprise. So it gives us an idea of what happened, or what we can look for, or what work we can leave out because it was properly done before. And after 21 years, there be no triggering of any special investigations. We would be wary generally in any organization. So on the risk analysis and planning for this audit, if we take it back from the private auditors, we'll have a bigger scope to look at because there being no triggers for the sake of whatever reason, it would be something like a red flag to us.
What's your comment about the quality of the written submissions? I mean, you say that you're worried about the fact that there were no internal investigations triggered. What about the quality of the submissions?
Okay, the quality, it's more like the contents themselves of the submission. Like on page 61, internal fraud policy, there's no policy at the entity. With such a multifaceted operations at our National Library Information Service, we would think there would have been a fraud policy. And they said it up openly, there is no policy. Another point we looked at was on page 46, a draft fixed asset policy, which is very basic for any entity. And what this leads to is whether there's enough insurance coverage for state property, because insurance policy would be fueled by the valuation of the fixed assets.
Sure.
And this has been a problem over the years with the Audit NALIS. On page 28, the financial management accounting system, the cost of it, the operations, we were unable to verify these things, but this is the core and the backbone of your accounting system.
Yes.
And it has to be put in place.
Okay, what I'm concerned about is that you are raising questions about the quality of the accounting system itself and what they produce that is then available to the auditors and eventually the Auditor General. And the second thing that you are raising is that the internal audit system, which is weak. And am I correct in saying that you have concerns about both things?
Mr. Chair, we have not evaluated the internal audit function of NALIS over the last 6 years because we contracted the work out.
Yes.
So we make no comment on it because the internal audit function could be very strong, but maybe for whatever reason they did not have the opportunity to do a special investigation.
Okay.
In terms of what was presented to us in the financial statements, certain basic things, as you mentioned before, like fixed asset valuation, the treatment of government grants remain the same, and these are material issues that should have been cleared up before. And this has been a concern for the Auditor General over the last 6 years and even before that.
Okay. There's another issue I want to clarify, which is the timeline on the outstanding audits. I got the feeling when the Director of Finance spoke that the timeline differed from the timeline that you gave as Assistant Auditor General. So I just want to kind of get that clear. What is the timeline that you are indicating for the outstanding documents 2016, 17, and 18?
The draft financials for those years have been submitted to the Auditor General by NALIS.
Okay.
We normally await the appointment of the external auditor, like they did for the 12 to 15, which was Baker Tilly,
yeah.
Ramcharter Montano. They completed the last audits, 12 to 15, as he said, in September. So I believe they will get into appointing of whichever company to do those other audits to get us up to date for 16 to 18.
Okay, but you said they've been submitted to
They have been submitted to the Auditor General. So the next process, the next step is that the Auditor General have to appoint a company to come in to do the actual audits.
Okay.
That's the next step.
And my understanding, based on what the Assistant Auditor General said, was that they had 2018, but not 16 and 17. Am I correct?
So we checked our records, and we cannot verify the receipt of the 16 and 17 statements.
Well, we've got to reconcile this, and the only way that I can do this is in writing. So I need to have the Director of Finance indicate to the Secretary, to this committee, what the situation actually is on paper, and I need to have the Assistant Auditor General also clarify their position from the Auditor General's office so that we can reconcile it and make sure, and if there's a problem, we solve it. Okay? I had another question which sort of arose on the OSH issue. Has NALIS ever been fined by OSH?
No.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. But you've had multiple visits.
We've had multiple visits and lots of letters, but I think generally they've been satisfied that the deadline they've given us, when they've come back to recheck, that there has been work in progress or that the defects have been addressed.
Okay. All right, I will.
quick question. Volunteerism is important in building a society, but also it can assist where funding is a challenge. A member of the public wishes to know how can they volunteer in the libraries, and maybe if you can give by way of examples. I know my method was a boldface, I just went in and offered, but I know there may be other ways they can assist, so if you can give examples. Thanks.
Okay, we have any number of initiatives that are ongoing in the library on a daily basis, more so in the public library. So a member of the public can volunteer. They can approach the Public Libraries Division, the Director of Public Libraries, with regard to lending their services to any initiative that we do have.
Can you give examples? Like, for example, storytelling is one, but there may be other ways.
Yes, so you have storytelling. We do have initiatives where you have classes that persons might be interested in providing to members of the public, right, for free. You have, outreach activities that the organization will normally be a part of, and sometimes we do need extra bodies when we have those initiatives. So definitely anyone who's willing to volunteer and work with us, we do welcome those persons. And we've had that ongoing over the years.
And what we've done, what we've done as well is to partner with communities. So we're the Kali Bay fishing, that fishing festival. Meloni, when there's a sports and family day in Meloni, we're out there. So in the malls, you'll find us in the malls. There are a number of ways in which people can access us, and which, if they wish to volunteer, they simply need to go to the public library in their particular community and ask, and we'll be more than willing to assist. Yeah.
Just as a follow-up to the member's question, is there any involvement in terms of corporate sponsorship?
At the moment, I would say no. We partner with certain organizations. So the Bocas Lit Festival, for instance, is held at NALIS. It's one of the major events at NALIS. We do partner with some of the embassies. They provide us with material. In terms of corporate sponsorship, there is some, but I'm not sure that it will impact our balance sheet, any.
I only say so because I think that if you have projects, then those can be perhaps taken to them. I think everybody wants to see Trinidad and Tobago in a better place when it comes to reading and so on. And I think if you are able to projectize and develop your project team, because I know that there are some gaps reading on some of the submissions and some of the work of the auditors, I think that's an area that perhaps you can look at. There might be some interest.
Certainly.
Senator Sipasad.
Thank you, Chairman. Just going through the documents from the auditors, the management letters and so on, I don't expect you to respond now, but if you could respond to the Secretariat. Some of the issues raised are relatively, what should I say? I wouldn't have expected to see an organization like NALIS get some of the comments made by the auditors. So I would just like if NALIS could respond and give us an indication of what is being done to resolve the financial issues raised, the receivables, the overpayment of the salaries, the accounts being out of balance, those kinds of things. Because, I mean, you shouldn't really have those issues. You're using software, etc. Things balance automatically and so on. So if you could send a response, please.
Yeah, we will do so, but I can also say that given the fact that the last audited reports you all would have would have been for 2011, so there would have been some significant progress that would have been made in the last couple of years in terms of our ability to reconcile accounts and to be more accurate in terms of our recording. Right, so, but we will provide you with the up-to-date, the last management letter responses, so that you will see where we are at.
Great, thank you.
Just one closing question to the Permanent Secretary. Permanent Secretary, what is the accountability relationship between NALIS and the Ministry of Communication?
Chair, well, in the general setup that I guess pervades over the public service, As a statutory authority, NALIS is very, I guess, insulated in terms of being an organization, but they have a board, and the board responds to the minister. There's also a sort of informal working relationship that I would have with the executive director. I am provided with, as well as the minister, board meeting minutes. Because we put through a lot of the paperwork for their PSIP projects and their requests for releases, again, we get copies of all their monthly expenditure statements, so we have those records on file. So it's that sort of oversight relationship. They will also have a relationship with the Ministry of Finance in a similar way.
Okay, so it's an oversight relationship with an option to intervene,
Yes.
but most times there is very little intervention.
Something will probably have to be flagged to us. You might
Yes.
hear that something is going on, and then we pay attention, because we will do a general review of the minutes that we get and the financial statements, but something will have to be flagged to you to intervene.
Okay, so from a supervisory point of view, it's really, the board is in charge with management for this statutory entity.
It is.
And the ministry has oversight and will only intervene if something is
If
flagged.
something is flagged to us.
Yes.
But the board does answer to the minister, so there is that sort of relationship as well.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I think we've had a good session this morning in terms of the information, and I think some of this information might have been very valuable to the public. I think we've had a good exchange on the library system itself, what it does, how it functions, what it does well, what are problematic, and also what it can do better and how we might get there. And I think all of us in this room would appreciate how important the library system is, given that we have, I mean, some fairly serious problems in the society that perhaps there is not a direct relationship between the role and the library and the solution to these problems. But there certainly is an indirect relationship in the solutions to some of those problems. We begin with the issue of literacy, and the library needs to play a critical role there. You are doing it. But, I mean, we need to highlight how important that is. Secondly, the quality of life in the community itself. And I note with interest that you are moving into community centers in addition to the school system. And I think that that is also very valuable. Some of the issues also have to do with partnerships and engagement of entities in the society of similar interests, or collaborative opportunities that might be created through this. And I note again that you are making some progress in that, and therefore I felt that there are many positive things that are happening with the library system. I find the financial issues related to auditing, internal audit, the accounting and so on, I really find them unnecessary, all right, if I may say so. And I think the members of my committee probably think so too. There is no reason why it should be so. It is not that complex an operation in terms of finance, in my view. And there's no reason why we should have a situation in which you have so many audited reports outstanding, why there's so many gaps, why you have such poor quality in terms of the materials that are sent to the Auditor General. And then finally, what can I say? A kind of unnecessary, in my view, problem of reconciling the financial situation. I also note, though, the positive steps that you're taking. I don't know if the library system can become self-sufficient at every point, all right? This is a service that, and what you can hope to do is to kind of live within your means, carrying up always the amount of money that you have to live with. And then you, within that framework, you can design ways and means of adding to the subventions from the government. And I note that you are taking some of those steps. So let's get the accounting things in order now. I really need to have the note from the financial director, the note from the auditor, and we need to reconcile that and bring this up to date so that we don't end up in the next year with more discrepancies and deficiencies and so on, and keep it going. And I wish NALIS all the luck in the world. I want to thank the media for being here and for being present, and I hope that you give ample coverage to the information that came out of this particular meeting of the Public Accounts Committee. I thank the Auditor General's Department for their very important presence and inputs. I thank the Permanent Secretary for being here and being very straightforward with us and giving a balanced Permanent Secretary's view of what's happening and what her role is. And I thank the chairman and all members of the staff of NALIS who were here this morning for making valuable contributions in engaging the engaging the committee. And well, to some extent engaging the community, because the community hears what you are saying. And my colleagues here, I thank always, because this is a very, very good committee. And they all work very diligently and they do care about the country. And we're happy to have you. Thank you very much.